Alright folks, Jack here again at the Vinyl Voyage. So today we're going to be looking at mixed genre albums. Genre of course is the way that different forms of artistic expression is categorised nice and neatly dependent on their form, their structure or their subject matter. So Dolly Parton of course would come under the country and western genre because Dolly Parton's music follows many of the tropes that you would expect to hear within a country and western song. So she sings songs about loss and heartache, religion and redemption, alcohol, and all these kind of things, the type of subject matter you'd expect to hear in a country and western song. Likewise, the music, there's a lot of acoustic guitars or pedal steel guitars. The tone of the electrics sound like country and western electric guitars, and all that put together helps to package the music in a way that helps the artist gather audiences from a particular genre, or it allows record companies to package music in a way that is sellable to the public, and it gives the public an expectation of what they're going to hear when they put on a record or a CD. So very often multi-genre albums can be criticised for having a lack of direction, being rather incoherent, but what's even worse is when the artist is accused of a lack of integrity. I'm looking at you, Dolly Parton's rock star. However, when multi-genre albums get it right, they can be so varied and rich that they're a wonderful, wonderful listening experience. So to begin with, I'm going to show the ultimate in genre mixing albums. There's so many genres on here that it's unbelievable. I'm not going to put it to the end because you already know what it is. It's really obvious. It is, of course, the Beatles from 1968 on Apple Records, commonly known as the White Album. Look, it's all white. It's got no numbers on it. It's not an expensive press. I think this is the Giles Martin remaster. It sounds amazing. But we'll go through quickly some of the genres on the album. There is like so many of them. Back in the USSR, surf rock, Glass Onion, a bit of psych, Obla Dee Obla Da, UK reggae. Continuing story of Bungalow Bills, like a children's song. While My Guitar Gently Weeps is like a love ballad. Happiness is a Warm Gun. That's like three different genres all in one song. So you've got that first section's a little bit of acoustic finger picking like folk, then it's a bit heavier rock, and then that last bit, the 50s kind of parody with those doo-wop backing vocals. It's so good. That's my favourite song on the album. Then you've got the first of two McCartney music hall numbers. You get Martha My Dear. There's Blackbird, another lovely bit of folk. Piggies is like a baroque pop song with those amazing harpsichord lines and the orchestration running through it. Then you've got some country and western with Rocky Raccoon, another bit of country with Don't Pass Me By, some blues with Why Don't We Do It in the Road, see a birthday song, Your Blues, again, UK blues music, some more folk with Mother Nature's Son. I don't even know what Everybody's Got Something to Hide except for Me and My Monkey is. Just a rock song. You've got some proto-metal with Helter Skelter. Honey Pie's the other music hall number. Some soul with Savoy Truffle with those great horns going through that. And Good Night is like a lullaby. But yeah, this never sounds contrived. It never sounds jarring. It doesn't sound like anybody but the Beatles. And it's just what a masterpiece, being able to blend all those different genres all together in one album and like a coherent piece of work. Yeah, it's the best of the best. So from one of the most popular albums of all time to something a little bit more obscure, this is Bright Phoebus by Lal and Mike Watterson. So I have shown this before, but I never really get into it. This is a cult album from the UK. It's a UK folk album from 1972 on Trailer Records. And like I said, it's a bit of a cult obscurity. Here we go, Trailer Records. And if you haven't heard of the Wattersons before, the Wattersons were a family-led folk band out of Hull in Yorkshire, the north of England. And they were very, very traditional. This here is their first album. It's called Frost and Fire, a calendar of ritual and magical songs. Like I said, it's very, very traditional. And this was released as the Wattersons, the family band. And it kind of covers themes of living on the earth, living amongst nature, lots of the kind of themes that you'd expect from a UK folk album. But this here, Bright Phoebus, is something a bit different. So to provide a little context to this album, prior to its release in '72, the Watersons had actually been on hiatus. They'd taken a break, with Mike Waterson becoming a painter and decorator. I think Lal was raising her family. Norma Waterson had went to the West Indies to be a DJ. However, Mike and Lal started talking that they were writing songs again, and it snowballed from there. So this was right in the middle of the UK folk boom in the early '70s. And while the Watersons' earlier albums are very sparse, they're very traditional folk with not much musical accompaniment, this is very, very different, because Martin Cormack from Steely Eyes Span was a fan of the Watersons, as was Ashley Hutchins from Fairport Convention, and they both get involved in the project. And they Ashley brought in other members of Fairport Convention to create more of a full band sound. And this album, really as a whole, flip flops between maybe the darker, more traditional folk songs of Lal and a more full progressive band sound, a more kind of folk rock sound. And a lot of these songs were written by Mike. So let's get into the songs then. So the album kicks off with Rubber Band, written by Mike Waterson, and it's like a kind of upbeat, jaunty, psychedelic number. It's got Fairport Convention backing them. It's like a full band sound. It's also got Bill Leader, who produced the album, on Juice Harp. But yeah, it's really, really cool song. It's unlike anything probably that would have been put out before, certainly from the Watersons, and it would probably really rubbed a lot of these folk purists up the wrong way with its kind of more progressive sound. But then you go into The Scarecrow, which is the next song by Lal and Mike Waterson, and that's this really, really dark, more traditional sounding folk song that has subject matter about these scarecrows in a field, and how in the old days children would have been offered up as sacrifices for good harvests and good crops. And it doesn't go into it like in detail, but it hints at it. It's definitely got a very sinister, dark folk sound to it. Martin Carthy playing acoustic guitar on that one. Then one of my favourites in the album, another darker folk song, is Fine Horseman, written by Lal Waterson. That's been covered numerous times by a lot of different people, most notably probably by Anne Briggs, which is a really, really good version as well. It's got lovely cello in there from Claire Diniz, but Richard Thompson on guitar from the Fairport, Martin McCarthy again. But then we've got other songs like Danny Rose, which is like a kind of 50s inspired number, kind of a rock and roll song, almost a bit of skiffle in there. Child Among the Weeds is again another folk one. And then on to side B, you've got Magical Man, which is again an upbeat, kind of psychedelic song, but that's got the full band in there. And there was also, within this album, there's also little elements of musique concrète in here as well, with people chattering away in the background or the sounds of ambulance. But on this one, I really like it. There's a story goes that when they were recording Magical Man, a postman came to the door to deliver a parcel. So they brought the postman in and he delivered the vocals on the chorus. What was the guy's name? Gordon Graham. Shady Lady again's got a kind of country sound to it. Red Wine and Promises is another Lal Waterson song, all about Lal being out on the booze. And then it finishes with Bright Feeis, which is like a kind of campfire sing-along. But I like this story about Mike Waterson. When he wrote Bright Feeis, the song, the final song on it, he'd been doing some painting and decorating on a house at the time, and he was up at a ladder with the sun beating down on his back. And when the song struck him, he rushed home to write it down and was docked a day's wages for failing to paint the house. So only 1,000 copies of Bright Feeis were pressed originally, and it didn't do well at the time. Like I said, it really bucked the trend in terms of what a folk album should be. However, over the years, it's grown in stature, one for its rarity, but also people have realised that it really is a buried treasure. It's become a bit of a cult classic, and over the years, it's kind of become known as the Sergeant Pepper's of folk due to its different mix of styles and genres, and how it broke away from, I suppose, your more traditional folk stylings of the time. So unfortunately, the rights to the album have changed hands a number of times, preventing the Watersons from re-releasing this. It was re-released, I think, in 2017 and by Domino Records, and then the album had to get recalled because there was a legal dispute as to whether Domino could legally put it out. And Like I said, a number of people got the reissue. It was supposedly a really good reissue as well, but the rest of them get recalled and it is no longer available on vinyl. So it's hard to come by, which is a real shame because it has to be an album that's listened to by more people. It's really, really good. Next up then, another album that has a bright Feeis on the cover art is of course Screamadelica from 1991 on Creation Records. So Screamadelica represented a massive stylistic shift for Primal Scream, who up until that point they were a kind of C86 jangle pop slash rock band, a kind of traditional rock band more on their second album. First one's more jangle pop, but this really mixes up so many different genres. With the introduction of the acid house scene and the shift in recreational drug use to ecstasy and LSD, Primal Scream were ready to do something new. And when they met producer Andrew Weatherall, that was kind of the last piece of the jigsaw. He mixed in elements of club culture like acid house and kind of created this rock dance hybrid that the Stone Roses had started in 1989 with their debut album. So as well as Andrew Weatherall producing this album, you've also got The Orb producing a track and the great Jimmy Miller, who had produced all those classic Stones albums from Beggar's Banquet up to Goat's Head Soup. But he produces the first song on the album, the kind of Stonesy gospel number, Moving On Up, which was really a sign of things to come for Primal Scream because their next album really continued in that vein. The second song, Slip Inside This House, betrays their garage rock roots because that's the only cover on the album. It's a song written by Rocky Erickson and the 13th Floor Elevators. But the way it's did here is really different. It has those kind of clubby dance rhythms. It's got that clubby bass, and you've still got the sitar coming in and out, but it really creates that kind of neo-psych stew. Primal Scream even managed to sample themselves when Andrew Weatherall took I'm Losing More Than I Ever Had, which was like a kind of straightforward indie rock song, and transformed it into Loaded. He put in that wonderful dance drum beat. There's all the samples running through the song. It's got that wonderful opening from Peter Fonda's Wild Angels, Just What Is It You Want to Do, and just created an absolute dance indie masterpiece. We've also got Damaged, which is another Jimmy Miller produced track. It sounds like it could have been a long lost outtake from Sticky Fingers, an absolutely beautiful acoustic ballad. We've also got Higher Than the Sun, described here as a dub symphony in 2 parts, along with Come Together, which is more like just a straightforward indie rock song. But Bobby Gillespie on this, he takes a back seat on a lot of the songs, and a lot of the time we've just got these kind of clubby, trancey instrumental passages that go through the song. It's far from a traditional rock album, but what it did do is it helped to bring electronica, I think, to the masses, especially in that kind of hybrid indie format, and it certainly helped sow the seeds of Britpop a couple of years later. In short then, really, Screamadelica would definitely be a contender for one of the best Scottish albums of all time. So this is The Turtles. The Turtles presents The Battle of the Bands from 1968 on White Whale Records. It's a concept album built around the idea that the Turtles are hosting a Battle of the Bands competition. They are the compares. This is them in their evening attire. Likewise on the back cover, how smart they look. But they also appear on each song as a different contestant within the Battle of the Bands. I think it's a really great concept and it really works well on this album. So the bands cover a multitude of genres that were kind of subgenres of popular music at the time. So you have surf rock, you have psych, you have country, you have kind of teen pop, you have more tribal, percussive led songs. But we can get into a few of these. The first song then is the Battle of the Bands, written by Harry Nilsson and performed by the US Teens, featuring Raoul, and they're like a kind of all-American pop band from the 60s. Then we've got The Last Thing I Remember, and that's quintessential psych rock from the wonderfully named The Atomic Enchilada. We've also got Eleanor, and that's almost a rewrite of the Turtles' massive hit Happy Together. It's White Whale were desperate for them to follow up their success on that song. I'm Chief Kamawanalia, we are the Royal Macadamia Nuts, performed by Chief Kamawanalia and his Royal Macadamia Nuts. That's like pure tribal drums, and it's performed by a kind of mock Hawaiian idol. This song's been sampled loads and loads of times by different hip-hop bands over the years, most notably probably by the Beastie Boys on the first track on Check Your Head, Jimmy James. Then you've got Surfer Dan, which is classic surf rock by the Crossfires. There's also Oh Daddy by the LA Bust, and that's got a great bit of Dixieland ragtime, piano and the instrumental break. Food by the Big Brothers has an a cappella barbershop quartet kind of bit going on in the middle of the song. It's a really great bit of sunshine pop, detailing loads of different foods, including brownies, which have a very special ingredient. Then there's the Fat Mallards and the Bluesgrass Fireball with Chicken Little Was Right, and that kind of mixes bluegrass and psych pop. I think it's a really, really good idea, and the Turtles pull it off with their kind of usual trademark humour and ear for melody. It's really, really good album. And finally then, we have Jamie T with Panic Prevention from 2007 on Virgin Records. So this was Jamie T's first album. I think he's roughly got about 4 albums now, but this is my favourite of his. If you're not familiar with Jamie T, he's a young guy, or he was a young guy when he released this back in 2007, from Wimbledon in London, and he received a lot of comparisons with Mike Skinner of the Streets. They both sang songs about urban youths and kind of heartbreak, alienation, loneliness, and clubbing and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of an unfavourable or an unfair comparison, because for me, Jamie T is a lot more musical. He can sing in a way that Mike Skinner can't, and he can also rap. Panic Prevention's got a really cool front cover, and there's lots of clues in here to the type of multiple genres that he covers within this album. So this is a room within his house filled with clutter or memorabilia. You can see this little poster here. Give him the boot too. This was a punk kind of ska compilation from the 90s. There's multiple little nods to Ian Dury, who I think he's more like than Mike Skinner. So you've got Do It Yourself album cover there. That's the record for New Boots and Panties. There's the back sleeve. Up here we've got, up here somewhere, there's a little pin of the Jam. But if you look in amongst all the different stuff, we've got Beastie Boys Check Your Head there, but there's loads and loads of little references to punk, to ska, to hip hop, and this album contains so many different genres of music. So looking at the songs then, first song, Brand New Bass Guitar. Well, Jamie T wrote a lot of his early songs purely on the bass guitar, and a lot of them just are himself accompanied by the bass guitar with a kind of lo-fi production. But that's really one of those. It's like a kind of acoustic bass punk type sound. You've got Salvador, which has a more driving kind of punky sound, but like almost like Spanish sounding chorus, I think. Calm Down Dearest is a little bit more electronic pop. Then we go into hip hop with So Lonely Was the Ballad. So the album title itself is about the panic attacks that Jamie T suffered as a youth. And this song here, there's a sample in the middle of it where it breaks into a self-help tape that I think Jamie T had used when he had these panic attacks. Back in the Game, that's like a kind of Billy Bragg inspired acoustic punk song. Sheila is more hip hop, where it kind of details a wild night out on the town. There's lots of screaming and shouting, and Bob Hoskins is in the video, but that's such a good song. If You've Got the Money is more bass led again, and that's got a really cool video to it as well, but that's almost like a kind of ska punk type song, ska pop. Yeah, loads and loads of different directions he takes, from indie pop to hip hop to electronic to ska. Really worth a listen if you've not heard it. Jamie T's Panic Prevention. So there we have it. 5 albums that defy genre, that refuse to be pigeonholed under one musical banner. They ping around a number of different musical styles, and for me, they're all the richer and more diverse for that. So if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd love you to subscribe, try to get those numbers up, and if you've got any of your own ideas or albums that you'd like to mention that fall under musically diverse or genre defying albums, I'd love to hear them. There's a couple that I'd love to have put in, but I didn't have them in vinyl, and I'd be interested to hear if some of you mention them. Other than that, until the next time, see you later.